Hello, I'm George Slaughter, and welcome back to my Genesis lectures, a verse-by-verse psycho-spiritual breakdown of the certain parts of the book of Genesis. Title: Genesis chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. The second day. Structure, separation, and the firmament of mind. Genesis chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. When we enter Genesis chapter 1, verse 7, something pivotal happens. The word spoken in verse 6 now becomes enacted. God made the firmament. In other words, the divine mind moves from conceptualization to manifestation. This marks the first fulfillment cycle of the Genesis pattern. Intention, let there be. Execution, and God made. Consequence, and it was so. This is the divine rhythm of creation, thought to will and will to form. And it reveals that creation in the biblical tradition is not merely physical. It is intentional structure flowing from spiritual causation. Section 2, waters as celestial intelligence, a multi-level symbol. We've defined waters in Genesis not as H2O, but as a metaphor for the flow of consciousness, a psycho-spiritual field. The ancients, especially in Hebrew thought, used poetic language to point to states of being. Water was the perfect metaphor for something that was without form, in constant motion, capable of reflecting light and or knowledge, and deeply associated with the subconscious and the unseen. So in this context, waters represents unbounded celestial intelligence, undifferentiated thought, the formless depth of potential. What we're witnessing in Genesis 1:7 is God beginning to organize that potential, not by destroying it, but by dividing it, separating levels of awareness into different levels of operation. Section 3, the firmament as an interface within divine mind. The Hebrew word translated as firmament is rakia. It literally means something stretched out, an expanse, a spread, but think of it less as a solid dome and more as a psychic membrane, a metaphysical interface. In our psycho-spiritual reading, the firmament is a boundary, not in space, but in consciousness. It is where the flow of intelligence is filtered, where the infinite begins to take on shape. This corresponds deeply with the wave-function collapse in quantum theory. When a quantum particle is unmeasured, it exists in a state of superposition, many possible states. Once observed, it collapses into one state. God, the ultimate observer, collapses the infinite possibilities of the waters into a structured system, a firmament. This is consciousness establishing internal structure. Section 4, upper and lower waters, the division of intelligence. God divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. This division is not an act of judgment, it's an act of differentiation. What was one becomes two, not in essence, but in function. The waters above represent spiritual archetypes, divine intention, and pure thought. The waters below represent creative energy, emotional potential, and the gestational depths of being. This mirrors Kabbalah, where divine light descends through 10 separat. Taoist metaphysics, where heaven and earth are born from the Tao. Depth psychology, where conscious and unconscious mind are separated yet connected. By creating this vertical structure, God is shaping the world into a sacred stratification of consciousness. It's not about hierarchy, it's about order. Section 5, naming the firmament heaven, the birth of sacred order. In verse 8, God names the firmament heaven. This act of naming is critical. In biblical cosmology, to name something is to define its essence. To name is to recognize its place in the divine order. Heaven is not a place, it is a state of structured divine mind. It is the first level of form that emerges from within the infinite. Heaven is where thought becomes pattern, where pattern becomes principle, where principle becomes destiny. When God names the firmament heaven, he is saying, this is the seat of higher thought. This is the field from which purpose flows. Section 6, the sacred three-tier structure, a template for being. After this act, creation now has three major levels. That's the waters above, which are divine intelligence and pure potential. The firmament, heaven, which is the interface of ordered consciousness, and the waters below. That's the creative potential, the subconscious gestational realm. This three-tier cosmology is echoed across world traditions. Plato's world of forms, mind, senses. The human trichotomy, spirit, soul, and body. Hinduism, Sat, being, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, bliss. Genesis is giving us a universal metaphysical template, one that applies to cosmos, mind, and spirit. This is the architecture of both the universe and the self. Section 7, we're going to examine why there was no "it was good" on day 2. Something curious happens at the end of verse 8. There is no "and God saw that it was good." Why? Because the act of separation is incomplete on its own. Division without purpose leads to dualism. So day 2 is not bad. It's pregnant with intention. It represents the moment of sacred separation that prepares the way for creation's foundation. Section 8, foreshadowing of Christ, the veil and the bridge. And now we're going to descend deeper. The firmament in Christian mystical theology foreshadows the veil that Christ himself will pass through. Hebrews 10:20 refers to his body as the veil. Matthew 27:51 tells us that the veil of the temple was torn at the moment of his death. What was the veil? It was the firmament within the temple. The same firmament in Genesis, the divider between realms. So in Christ, the waters above and below are reunited. He becomes the ladder of Jacob, the logos that descends, the bridge that joins. Genesis holds the mystery before it is revealed. The second day awaits its fulfillment in the third. This is why creation and redemption are the same pattern. Genesis 1:7 through 8 is a sacred moment of interior design. God is not making the weather. He is building the universal mind. He's installing the first membrane of awareness, creating levels within thought, separating so that structure can emerge. And by calling the firmament heaven, he names consciousness as the first sanctuary. You carry this firmament within you. You are made of the waters below and the waters above, and heaven is the space between, where you choose which direction to turn your gaze. Day 2 gives us the sacred divide. Day 3 will give us the foundation, and from there we will rise.